Grace, Harrison and Cole is running a company-wide innovation debate next month. David has assigned me to argue the case for remote first working, which I agree with, so I should be fine, right? Before we discuss that, I want you to argue against it. Against remote working? But I'm supposed to argue for it. I know. Argue against it first. Grace, the debate is in 3 weeks. I need to prepare the for argument. Jack, if you can only argue one side of an issue, you don't understand the issue. You understand your opinion, which is different. Say that again. If you can only argue one side of an issue, you don't understand the issue. You understand your opinion. Understanding both sides is what separates C1 Advanced English from everything below it. That's actually a really significant statement. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Level 5 of the Speak Bench. I'm Grace. That was Jack having what I believe was a genuine intellectual moment. Episode 25, C1 Advanced, the highest level of our series, debating complex topics, both sides. Let's go. If you've made it to Level 5 with us, you've come an enormous distance from Episode 1. Welcome to the top. First, what changes at C1? What makes this level different from everything before it? Because I feel like my English is pretty good now. What more is there? At every level below C1, you're learning to communicate, to be understood, to express yourself. At C1, you learn to think in English, to construct, to persuade, to analyze, to hold complexity. What's the difference between expressing and constructing? Expressing, I think remote working is better for productivity. Constructing, while proponents of office-based work cite the importance of collaboration and spontaneous interaction, the empirical evidence increasingly suggests that structured remote environments can achieve comparable or superior productivity outcomes, particularly for focused analytical tasks. Wow, those are two completely different levels of statement. Same idea, completely different intellectual weight. And listeners, if that second sentence felt slightly beyond you, it shouldn't by the end of today. Opinion versus argument. An opinion is a position. An argument is a position plus evidence plus acknowledgement of the other side plus a reason your position is more compelling despite the counterarguments. So an argument has 3 parts: my position, the other side's point, and why I'm still right. That's a good simplification. And in C1 English, the language you use to navigate between those 3 parts is what signals your level. Let's build that language now. Qualifying language, phrases that show you understand something, is not absolute. To some extent, in many cases, it could be argued that, under certain circumstances, in the majority of situations. You can say, like, remote working is to some extent more productive than office working. Yes, to some extent signals not always, not in every case, but in many situations. It's intellectually honest, and at C1, intellectual honesty is more impressive than false certainty. What about acknowledging the complexity of an issue? Phrases like, the issue is considerably more nuanced than it might first appear. This is not a simple matter of X versus Y. The relationship between X and Y is complex and context-dependent. The relationship between remote working and productivity is complex and context-dependent. That sounds like something a serious person says. Because it is true, and truth stated precisely is what C1 sounds like. Now, conceding points. This is where many debaters fail. They refuse to acknowledge anything positive about the other side, but the most compelling debaters concede first and then counter. Concede, then counter? The structure, while it is true that, whilst I acknowledge that, it would be disingenuous to deny that, and then, nevertheless, however, the evidence nonetheless suggests, despite this, while it is true that office environments facilitate certain types of spontaneous collaboration, the evidence nevertheless suggests that the majority of knowledge workers are more productive in structured remote settings. That is C1. You acknowledged the opponent's valid point, you used nevertheless to pivot, you made your counter with evidence referenced. That sentence would be at home in any professional debate or academic paper. Now, the actual debate. Jack, argue for remote working. Full C1 language. Structure your argument. Are you ready? The proposition that remote-first working models are beneficial to both individual employees and organizations is, I would argue, supported by a considerable body of evidence. Firstly, the elimination of commute time represents a significant return of productive hours to the individual, time that is, in many cases, redirected towards both professional output and personal well-being. Good. Continue. Furthermore, the empirical data on remote worker satisfaction consistently demonstrates elevated levels of autonomy and engagement. While it is true that some roles necessitate physical presence, it could be argued that these represent a minority of professional functions in the modern knowledge economy. In the majority of cases, the flexibility afforded by remote working arrangements translates directly into measurable organizational benefits. Jack? That was genuinely impressive. Did that just come out? You used firstly and furthermore for structure, you used in many cases and in the majority of cases as qualifiers, you used while it is true that, as a concession, you referenced empirical data. That is a constructed argument. And I didn't even think about it. The language just supported the thinking. Exactly. That is what level 5 feels like. The language becomes the tool, not the obstacle. Now, argue against it. Against something I believe in. Okay, let me think. While proponents of remote working cite productivity gains and individual autonomy, it would be intellectually dishonest to dismiss the considerable evidence that distributed teams face substantive challenges in areas of cohesion, mentorship, and cultural alignment. The absence of physical co-presence has been shown to disproportionately disadvantage younger professionals who rely on informal learning and proximity to senior colleagues for career development. Furthermore, the long-term societal implications of reduced workplace community warrant serious consideration. Quiet for a moment. Jack, did I do it? Genuinely moved. You just argued, compellingly and honestly, against something you actually believe in, using evidence, using concessions, using qualifiers. That is not just advanced English, that is advanced thinking in English. And Grace, arguing the other side actually made my for argument stronger because now I know exactly what I need to address. That is precisely why I asked you to do it. The best arguments anticipate counter-arguments because the debater has already made those counter-arguments themselves. If you're watching this and thinking, this is hard, you're right. C1 is hard, and that's why it matters. If you can debate complex topics in English with intellectual honesty and linguistic precision, doors open that most people never even find. Let me give you a few more C1 debate structures. Counter-argument framing. Proponents would argue that, critics contend that, those in favor suggest that, opponents maintain that. Proponents of office-first working would argue that the spontaneity of physical interaction drives innovation in ways that digital tools cannot replicate. And evidence reference phrases. Research indicates that, studies have consistently shown that, the data suggests there is mounting evidence to support the claim that, studies have consistently shown that employees with flexible working arrangements report higher levels of job satisfaction, although the relationship between satisfaction and output requires nuanced examination. That nuanced examination at the end, that is C1. Not just stating the finding, but immediately qualifying its application. That is the hallmark of advanced intellectual English. If today's episode is stretching your brain, that is exactly what it should be doing. Please subscribe to the Speak Bench and comment your debate sentences below. We genuinely want to see C1 language from our listeners. Rapid fire. I give you a basic opinion statement. You upgrade it to C1 debate language. Ready. Quick. Social media is bad for young people. While it is true that social media platforms provide meaningful connection for many young users, the mounting evidence regarding their impact on adolescent mental health warrants serious consideration by policymakers and parents alike. Quick, people should work less. The relationship between working hours and productivity is considerably more complex than advocates of reduced working time acknowledge, though the evidence for diminishing returns beyond certain thresholds remains compelling. Quick, technology is changing education. It could be argued that technological integration in education represents one of the most significant pedagogical shifts of the modern era, though its efficacy remains context-dependent and unevenly distributed across socioeconomic groups. 3 for 3. Every single one qualified, nuanced, evidenced, and intellectually honest. That is C1 Advanced English. Grace, you said you had something to tell me earlier in the week, and then we got into the debate preparation and I forgot to ask. I did say that. You're doing the thing where you pause before saying something important. I've been offered a position at a university to teach English language and communication to international students. A university position? Yes. Grace, that's incredible. Are you going to take it? I don't know yet. I'm thinking about it. Listeners, I don't know what this means for the Speak Bench, and I think Grace doesn't fully know yet either, but there are 5 episodes left, and I have a feeling they're going to matter. 5 episodes, starting with episode 26, Academic and Research English. Jack needs to write a research-backed report for Stellar Tech, and I might need to think about what I'm building here. Your challenge this week: argue one side of a complex topic in 3 sentences using today's debate language. Social media good or bad, remote working or office, any topic you care about. Show us C1 in the comments. I'm Jack from the Speak Bench, where real conversations meet real English. And I'm Grace. See you in episode 26. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. And remember, understanding both sides isn't weakness. It's the whole point.